Call to order the January 22nd, 2013 regular meeting of the CUSD 201 Board of Education. Call, please, Mrs. McMahon.
Mr. Armstrong?
Here.
Ms. Caparelli?
Here.
Mr. Charleston?
Here.
Mrs. Charlton? Mrs. Hancock? Mr. Price?
Here.
Mrs. Thomas?
Here.
If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is approval of minutes. We'll start with the December 18th meeting. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the December 18th, 2012 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the closed session of the December 18th, 2012 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. January 8th. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the January 8th, 2013 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the closed session of the January 8th, 2013 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Do we have any public comment this evening?
Good evening. My name is Sylvia Austin, and I am the Westmont president. And I am speaking on the behalf of the educational support staff who is committed and caring members of the District 201 community. Westmont represents the teachers, assistants, school secretaries, nurses, food service employees, and media assistants. We impact the life of the students in the Westmont every day. Many of our educational support staff professionals in Westmont work 2 or even 3 jobs to feed and shelter their families, or even to earn that we are earned so that we will qualify. Some of us qualify for government assistance. It is shameful that we work full-time jobs in the school district and some of our children are on free and reduced lunch programs. A world-class education system for our district demands dedicated education support professionals who are paid a living wage. A living wage is defined as sufficient earnings to cover the basic needs. The National Education Association is calling for minimum annual starting salaries as of $28,000 a year for all education support staff professionals. The majority of the Westmont education support staff professionals earn significantly less than $20,000 a year, and we are lower employees. We are a community member and we are the community members and taxpayers. We are proud to serve the children and the parents in the Westmont Community District. We have been working without a contract since the beginning of the school year. We have been bargaining in good faith and have worked with a fellow mediator in an attempt to reach an equitable agreement. We have been told that we do not deserve a salary increase because teachers took a pay freeze in their previous contract. We have been told that it is fair for our group to be treated the same as the teachers, and the Board of Education stands firmly on this matter. We do not have a salary schedule that offers increases for longevity or education. We only receive a basic raise in our hourly wages when we get a percentage increase. If you deny us an increase and demand a freeze on our hourly wages, we lose buying power and cannot keep up with the pace of the cost of living. Our families suffer financially. You said you value our service, but you insist on devaluing our salaries. Our bargain request has been very reasonable. We have shared data with you that confirms we are among the lowest paid educational support staff professions in DuPage County. You can afford to give us a raise. We deserve it. Please reconsider your position and honor the service we provide to the school district 201 students, parents, and the community. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share my thoughts with you this evening. Thank you for serving on the school board and supporting our entire Westmont community. And we know that there are times, we know that it has been hard times in the community and all over the world. And we understand that, but we care about the kids and we support the kids as well as the teachers and all the other support staffs in the community. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments this evening? Okay. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Does anyone want a particular item pulled for individual consideration? Is there any discussion or comments concerning any of the 5 items on the consent agenda?
Just a concern on personnel, Kevin and Kim. You know, there's obviously a resignation included in there. And for the part-time positions, you know, it feels increasingly like there's a lot of turnover in those part-time positions. It's disconcerting because, you know, you get people invested in those positions and in the kids, and then it turns. And just as and it's not specific to this item, but just as a general comment, we need to, I think this board should take and you guys should take a good look at that and figure out, you know, how to make those spots somewhat more stable.
Mm-hmm.
It's not uncommon in times of administrative turnover that there would be some departures,
Sometimes.
especially at a part-time level. Is that accurate, or?
Sometimes they go hand in hand. I think some of these are because these are connected to our fine arts department, and we did have significant turnover in our fine arts department.
Right.
So I think some of that is going hand in hand.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Number 1, personnel recommendations. Number 2, approval of student tours. Number 3, abatement of working cash funds. Number 4, approval of January 2013 expenditure report. Number 5, ratification of December 2012 regular payroll.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Ms. Caparelli?
Yes.
Mr. Charleston?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Next item on the agenda is discussion item, presentation of the monthly financial statements.
Okay. You have the reports in your packet, and again, not too much different this month from the previous months. The state has vouchered $636,000 in categorical payments that have not been released to the district, and this is the same scenario we've been operating under for the last few years. The district did receive 2 installments of the 2011 tax levy in December because of the New Year holiday. Normally, we would get 1 in December and 1 in January, but they actually released that money early, so we got both in December. So total taxes collected during December were about $302,000. Total taxes collected to date are just over $20.6 million, and that represents a 99.47% collection rate, which is comparable to the prior year. And we may receive one more minor distribution in February. It kind of depends on where things are headed. In the Ed and Tort funds, again, the state has vouchered $427,000 of FY13 payments that have not been released to the district. We are receiving general state aid payments according to schedule. And revenues in the Operations and Maintenance Fund are where they should be at this time of year. In the Transportation Fund, again, state has vouchered $209,000 of categorical payments that have not been released to the district. And expenditures in the Ed and Tort Fund are comparable to the prior years and where they should be at this time of year. And again, in the O&M fund, they're lower than normal, but that's because of the fire and prevention safety expenditures that we had in the prior year. The O&M fund alone is 56% spent to date, which is comparable to the past 2 years. And in the transportation fund, expenditures are low in comparison to the prior years. The Westway coach has been slow to bill us, so that's why those why that percentage spent is so low. But that will be up to speed after this next bill run in January. And then the statement of position is presented. You also have the investments and the student activity account balances and the lunch report. Does anybody have any questions on those?
Did we make the catch-up payments to the teachers in December or January?
In December.
So they're reflected in the 12/31 Fed balances?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything further on that?
No.
Okay, then we'll move to the next discussion item. Ms. Allen from Miller Cooper is here for the presentation of the fiscal year 2012 audit. And if I could ask board members to make a note and hold your questions till after the full presentation, I think that would be the best thing to do.
Okay, that's fine. If that's how you want to do it, that's fine. It's just if anyone really has a question, I don't mind. But if you want to do them at the end,
Okay.
that would be perfectly fine. I'm just going to very quickly go over just the different parts of your comprehensive annual financial report. You should have that along with 2 letters that we issued also. As you know, the statements are similar to statements you had in the prior year. You might see a few little different formatting changes due to this was the first year that Miller Cooper did perform the audit for your district. We do prepare a comprehensive annual financial report for you that's divided into 3 sections: your introductory section, your financial section, and statistical section. Your introductory section contains your district's organizational chart, a listing of all the principals and officers and officials. The transmittal letter, which is prepared by the district, Kim prepares that part of the document, and also your Certificate of Excellence Award from ASBO International that the district received for the reporting on their June 30th, 2011 comprehensive annual financial report. The next section is the financial section, which starts with your independent auditor's report, which was a clean, unqualified opinion. That is the highest level of an auditor's opinion that you can receive. Following the auditor's report is the management's discussion and analysis, which is another document within there that is prepared by the district. I always tell people, if you're not a numbers person and don't want to sit and read the whole 100 pages that's in there, the MD&A is a great place to get an overview of what's contained in the CAFR. It provides good explanations of the different kinds of statements that are within your CAFR, and it just gives a good overview and a big picture of the district's finances for the year. The next part of the CAFR is your basic financial statements, and I want to point out here, and I don't know if There was a big conversation on this last year. GASB 54 was implemented last year, where you changed the presentation of your fund balances, and it also changed some of the fund reporting. So anywhere in the basic financial statements where you see the general fund, that's where your ed fund, your tort immunity and judgment fund, and your working cash fund have been combined together. So just when you're looking at the fund balances, realize it's those three funds put together. And there are pages 74 and 75 within your document that show combining statements of those, the detail of those three funds. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at the statements. Within the basic financial statements, we have the government-wide financial statements and your fund financial statements, along with reconciliations that reconcile those two different types of statements. The government-wide financial statements, they give an overview of the district's finances in a matter similar to the private sector business. That's where you'll see the capital assets and the debt of the district is presented on those statements. Where in the fund financial statements, it's more similar to the information Kim was presenting to you tonight, or you'd see in the annual financial report that's filed with ISB. If you've looked at the audit from the fund financial statements on pages 17 and 18 and 20 and 21, it shows that the district operated with an excess of revenues over expenditures of approximately $161,000. The Fire Prevention and Safety Fund was one fund that had the largest deficit spending, but that's due to having approved life safety projects that you did in the prior, or in the year that we were auditing, so the prior year to you guys. The district's capital projects fund ended the year with a deficit fund balance of approximately $20,000, and I'm sure there's a plan to have additional revenue sources or transfers made to that fund to pay for those additional projects that are out there. After the financial statement, the basic and fund financial statements, we have the notes to the financial statements. This is where they provide additional detailed information on data provided in the government-wide financial statements and the fund. There's more detailed information on the capital assets, on your debt. There's also a lot of information on the various significant accounting policies, and along with information on the retirement plans of TRS and IMRF and your other post-employment benefits. The statements also, following the notes to financial statements are detailed statements of all your funds. They show the budget and actual information from 2012, and they also have comparative 2011 information. So there's a lot of detailed information there about your funds and your functions and your objects that show comparative information. There's also a statement of assets and liabilities for student activity funds, so you can see by each school and each activity within the schools, all the information there. The final section is your statistical section. All the schedules contained in this section are required to be contained in the CAFR in order to receive your Certificate of Excellence. This section contains schedules on financial trends, property tax information, debt information, demographic and economic information, as well as operating information. It's where you'll find your operating cost per pupil, tuition cost per pupil. I know a lot of people like to look at that. Many districts find the information presented in the CAFR very helpful when you're doing financial planning with all the trend information that's presented there. Sorry. Oh, I was saying, so are there any questions on the financial statements or anything else that's contained in there?
Well, the one question conversation I had about, there was a prior period accrual, and I don't know if you want to deal with this now or if you want to deal with this. I'm not sure what else you have to talk about at this point.
I have there's two letters that we also issued.
Yeah.
We can start with that. There's our control deficiency letter, we call it. There's 4 different levels of deficiencies that we report. We report material weaknesses, you can report significant deficiencies, control deficiencies, and management advices. We did present one material weakness, as you just discussed, which was due to the prior period adjustment. And the reason it is considered a material weakness is in the standards, when you have a prior period adjustment, it's automatically considered a material weakness. Do you have a specific question, or do you want me to?
Well, yeah, I'll warn you first. I managed to pass that test, the CPA exam, many years ago,
okay.
And I never practiced. So I know enough just to be dangerous,
okay.
and not enough to be an expert, which is why you're here. But the accrual for the prior period accrual struck me as funny thinking about it this way. I recognize that the teachers earn their contractual pay rate over the 9-month school year.
Right.
Right? And so as of June 30th, there's a number of them who take 12-month pay. And so
Right.
I assume that accrual, which is a sizable accrual, which reduced our fund balances, or the reflection of our fund balances at June 30th, by like $1.6 million, plus or minus?
Yes, there was, yeah, it's about $1.6 million.
Yeah, and Dan, all of our teachers are paid on 12 months.
All of them?
All employees are paid on a 12-month
Okay.
basis.
So, and that's been that way for ever, I assume?
Yeah, I'm not sure when that
For a very
started,
long
but
time.
as long as I've been here, prior to my arrival, that's how
Yeah, my
it's been.
reference point is just that when my wife taught, they actually gave her the option
Okay.
of taking
And there were
pay.
many districts that used to give teachers the option of having, I mean, some would go from
Right.
20 pays,
Yeah,
24,
9 months.
26. Many districts used to have 3 options. And
Yeah.
districts I know are really trying to get away from that just because of the
Yeah.
payroll
So
processing
the reason
nightmare.
it strikes me as odd, the accrual strikes me as odd, is because it's effectively a 60-day accrual for payments related to the prior school year, right?
The 60 days is really a
Because
property
June
tax.
30th to like August.
Right, that's.
Because you
right,
burn
that's
off
sort
the
of-
accrual in 60
right,
days.
right.
That's what I mean by that,
Okay.
right? So, but it's our practice, and has been forever, to effectively pay on a 12-month basis. So by reducing the fund balances effective June 30th, what we're really reflecting in the June 30th financial statements is a statement of fund balances as if all teachers were paid over the contractual school year.
I
Well,
think,
no, well, let's look at it
think
this way
it's-
too. I mean,
You're pushing,
Yeah.
pushing
When you're-
those 2 months into the
what it
6/30 balances.
is you have to reflect the obligations of the district
Yeah,
as of June 30th. If your entity ceased to exist,
you would
Right,
owe
right,
that
you
money
would owe
still.
that money.
But can I?
Understood,
But
understood.
when you're saying, I realize it reduced your fund balances more in doing a prior period adjustment in the first year when you would do it, but over time, with any accrual, each year, you're sort of doing a net adjustment.
Yeah, it
So when you-
burns
so
off
like
in
when you-
60 days,
So
right?
when we do it again this year,
Yeah.
for this year, yeah, we'll pick up all the teachers'
Yeah.
contracts through 6/30. The adjustment won't be so big, because let's say I don't remember the amount.
probably
of
be
the
about
exact-
100,
The amount of the accrual is close to
150,000.
$2 million.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't have, depending on the teacher's pay raise or whatever, you're probably only going to have another about 2 million in some. So it's not going to reduce your fund balance again.
No,
by a
no,
large
I
amount
understand,
of money.
I understand. But,
Okay.
so for this year, just in this June 30th of 12 statement,
Mm-hmm.
though, there's a fairly sizable reconciling item, I would imagine, between our actual cash balances, right? Because
Well, an accrual though does not affect your cash balance.
No, I know, but if I were going to compare, because we get fund balance reports. I were going to pull my June 30th fund balance report and try to tie them to this statement, effective June 30th. There are a handful of funds that don't have accruals, so they would reflect dead on, penny for penny, the fund balances. And the thing that come to mind are Social Security, IMRF.
Well, no, they all have accruals in them because you've got property tax accruals and deferrals, you've got intergovernmental, we've got some accounts receivable, we've got replacement taxes receivable.
Okay, so, but because there's a handful of funds that actually are dead on, right? So those must be ones that we don't levy for?
The only one that you're not showing that there's no accruals in is your fire prevention and safety fund. Otherwise, there's accrual showing, modified accrual,
Why would-
entry
yeah.
showing in all funds.
Okay,
You report internally on a cash basis,
yes.
right? And so then when we come in, the finance business office provides us with information to convert to the modified accrual basis.
Yes, and we manage, and where this is going is we manage on a cash basis, this board, right?
Right.
I mean, we don't manage to a modified accrual sort of balance
Right.
type event. So, but if I were to try to take the fund balances reflected on June 30th in our internal reporting, which is cash, and try to tie them into our fund balances as reported here, There's about my last check was that there was about $1.2 million discrepancy between those numbers. That being that the fund balance is reflected in the GAAP or in the modified GAAP statements is $1.2 million lower than we carry in cash.
From making the accrual entries, okay?
So, at issue for me is this, particularly as it relates to teacher salaries. You know, it seems odd to me to accrue into the June 30th balances, the fund balances, even though I recognize that it's earned and done, but there's, decades of practice where teachers take those payments over 12 months. What we're reflecting in here, to anybody else who doesn't know to go to our publicly, available fund balance reports, what's reflected in here will appear about $1.2 million lower for June 30th, well, specifically for June 30th in any given year.
But you're going to find that anywhere that
Okay.
you're converting over to a modified accrual basis.
So here's
Which is GAAP reporting.
Yeah.
Cash basis reporting is not considered GAAP reporting.
Understood.
And you also can't file a CAFR either if you present you can't do a CAFR on the cash
It's just
basis.
odd to me, given that the practice is entirely consistent, that things are paid over 12.
What do you mean the practice? I guess I'm not understanding.
We've been paying 12 teacher salaries over 12 months for gobs and gobs and gobs of years for our entire staff now.
Well, my understanding is when we came in to do the audit, and I can't say what the other auditors did. I'm not from that firm. When we came in and did planning and started looking at things, I went and looked at their work papers, and when we started auditing, that's when we realized the teacher salaries were never accrued.
The summer piece, yes.
The summer piece of it was never accrued.
Yes.
Now, just because they weren't accrued by another firm doesn't mean that that was, following the standards and from our standpoint, the correct way to do it.
Well, because by policy, we pay them over 12.
Yeah, but
Right,
Dan,
but-
even in any
Right.
other district, that's doing a CAFR and doing
Yeah.
modified accrual, that should have been done. And I think, Betsy, was it like 2003? Did we determine, I can't remember exactly when that GASB went into effect, when they should have accrued those and did
Well,
not.
but that part of it, this accruing, this has nothing to, I think you're talking about GASB 34. I mean, that's just when,
Yeah, that's-
that has nothing to do with modified accrual. I mean, modified accrual is, we're picking up the teacher's salaries, what they, through June 30th, what they've earned, even though
They
that's how
haven't
you
been paid
do
it, yeah,
That's-
even though they
But
haven't
they've
been paid.
earned it
No, I understand, I
through
understand.
June 30th or
Yes.
whatever their last
Yes.
pay date is. So you're picking up and putting all the expenditures for that fiscal year in that year.
Yeah.
The same thing you do with a payable. I mean,
No, I understand. So quick question, again, remind me, how do we do the real estate, the revenue side, the tax accruals, the real estate tax accruals as of June 30th?
you have the June,
Just the June, not September?
no, because it's a 60-day, we take your levy, whatever, you take your full extension.
Yeah.
I have to think, because you're in DuPage County, so you get them in June and September, correct?
Well, payments are due in June, so there's a June.
Right, so there's half of,
a July
of your
payment.
levy, there's half of your levy sitting here
Yeah.
as showing as a receivable, but then there's anything received in the 60 days taken against, and there's also the deferred amount in there too.
Okay. So okay. So anyway, back to point, which is, because this is a fairly esoteric conversation, I want to get away from it. Back to point, we manage cash in particular, I assume next meeting, we're going to do the PMA conversation, right? And part of that PMA conversation is what they pick up for fund balances, because every May 30th, because we actually get, the bulk of our cash in June, and then again in September, right? So we manage to cash. So if we're reflecting, if PMA picks up this June 30th number, it's basically going to carry forward that hit in their models, because that model is static,
But
right?
does-
It's a June 30th model, effectively. So I'm just thinking out loud about how we, as a district, manage cash, because the important thing to we, us, as we manage cash, when we look at a 5-year projection, is that there's a low point event in our year, and it's May 30th. And the question is, when is that low point event ever going to get to 0 or below 0, right? I mean, that's our concern, because at that point, then, we have to borrow money.
Can I add one point to this? I mean, we're talking about two different things, like you're talking
I know,
about cash.
I'm going to cash, so I mean.
But I'm just saying, just in general, when you're looking at statements, even on a cash basis, there can be a difference between cash and fund
No, I
balance.
understand. What I'm
So,
saying, the reason I'm bringing it up is because PMA, the people who do our cash modeling,
Right.
pick up the gap fund balances,
That's what I'm saying. So what does PMA start with? Your fund balances?
the gap
And they
ones.
tie to the AFR, so this adjustment would be reflected.
Any modified accrual adjustment would be part
Gets
of that.
impounded into our cash numbers, right? Which
Yeah.
is weird.
Can I make
we're trying to
a
look-
suggestion, or just ask
Yeah,
you if you're
go.
interested in this? For many of our districts where, well, pretty much all of our districts, we convert from cash to modified accrual for
Yeah.
reporting purposes. I have a spreadsheet. Sometimes we include it in their audits, and sometimes we just supply it to the business office to share with their board, that shows how your cash fund balance reconciles to your modified accrual fund balance. And I'd be happy to share that with Kim, to share with you, if that would
I think
would
that's
help also.
relevant, yeah, and then, but secondly, I think those are the, I'm just trying to get to, because to me, the strategic decisions are not around this, right? The strategic decisions we make are around that 5-year model, and we need to reflect cash that we actually have, as opposed to, accruals for 2 months of payables that we don't have to pay, until 2 months out and as we go. Because what we're managing for is May, not for June 30th, and not for an accrual. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I also believe, I don't work for PMA by any means, and I would assume that PMA's model that they use to do projections takes that all into effect, that they know which are the accruals are.
Well, I'll ask that question, because I have asked that question. Are they picking up the accrued balances?
That's what we decided to do, is pick up the
The
accrued balances.
which at June 30th are reflecting a number
Right.
$1.2 million less than we actually have
So
in the
that
bank.
everything, again, ties to the reports, to the AFR, and goes back and ties to the reports that we're actually have. Because otherwise, now you're keeping track of, well, I made this adjustment for this and this adjustment for that.
So when we do this 5-year projection.
And I run my own, they run
No, I
a
know.
cash flow, but I run my own cash flow as well and monitor it on a daily basis to see where we're at. So I know where we're at cash-wise.
But so when we do our 5-year projection, and we do the low point balances, May 30th of every year, May 31st, whatever that. I think the thing to remind board members is that there's actually, once it hits 0, if it hits, for instance, if it hits -1, it's not really -1 at May 31st then. It's really -1 plus the accrual. So you actually have cash, even though the PMA model shows you at 0.
Right, and we wouldn't borrow, before we would ever, look at doing TAWs or anything like that.
Yeah.
When we run
You would have
cash
to
flows
to come to us and big
lot
talks and all that
involved.
kind
And
of stuff.
some of, and I would assume the so-called
But here's-
cash flow that you're running is your actual cash too, and
Right,
not
it
fund
is.
balance, where you're
Here's the
looking at the
strategic
actual
issue.
cash.
Here's
right.
the strategic issue, to me. If I have a PMA report in it that says a low balance event at 0 is in 2015, 3 years from now, then I'm making strategic decisions today based on that event. Not at 2015, but today. I would be pressing, Kevin and you, we're going to be 0 in 2015. We need to start thinking about budget cuts. Well, the reality is we may or may not need to do it right away, or we may or may not even need to think about it. Right?
Well, yeah, and there's so many unknowns in a model that 2 or 3 years out compound, because you've got things going into play like CPI, you've
Year
got
5, on year
EAV.
4 and 5, I pretty much dismiss it. But on years 2 and 3, year 1 is a budget.
Well, yeah, year 1 and 2, but
Year
even
2 and 3
it's a
are
little
pretty
iffy.
well known, and pretty stable stuff, unless you have really big events, right, that are surprises. So, look, for what it's worth, my observation is this. You know, I get why we reflect GAAP this way. I think the important thing for board members on this board and in this community going forward is that they understand that the PMA models, when we look at those May 31st low balances, aren't necessarily the low balances. In fact, that there's cash that's not being reflected because there's accruals that are impounded into those balances.
Into the fund balances.
Yeah.
Not into the cash balances.
Right, and yeah.
We don't touch your cash
Right.
balances.
No, I know, yeah, and I didn't mean to imply that.
Well, yeah, but, I mean, you understand it. I mean, there's some people who,
This was a really
Podcast.
esoteric conversation we just had, and so I apologize to the
that's
group.
okay.
My big issue really is just, as people make important decisions on a look-forward basis, to remember that if PMA is just going to pick up the accrued balances, to remember that there's a little more cushion in there than people think.
Did you get your other letter also?
Pardon me?
Did you get everything you had?
yeah, I mean, I don't need to go through, I'm sure you guys have all read the letter. I think the main point of the letter was that issue. I'll answer any questions that you have on them. The other letter that we have is a required communication to the board. It's a letter that we're required to present to the board. It just lets you know our responsibilities as auditors, your responsibilities as a district and as the board. It lets you know that we had no issues getting the audit done this year. Being a first-time audit, it went very well. That's always more challenging sometimes, but it all went very well. It just lets you know that we didn't, when we issued the financial statements at the district, superintendent and Kim both signed a management representation letter taking responsibility for the financial statements, as a district has to do, and they signed that in order for us to release the financial statements this year. So that's all I have, or I'll answer any more questions people have. So.
And I just have one more for Kim and Kevin, which is, are we doing something about the formal termination policy recommendation?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
There's a formal termination policy recommendation?
Yes.
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 And so that's got to come through the policy committee and into the board then? Or no?
It hasn't gone through the policy committee. I mean, yeah.
It has to, yeah, okay. Okay.
Any further questions, comments?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report.
First, with regards to our joint committee, we rescheduled our meeting from last week. It will be Thursday night this week at 6:30 p.m. at the high school. The climate committee did go forward with their meeting. John Jonak, who chairs that committee, checked with some of the members, and they prefer to meet. And so this Thursday, then, it'll be the finance, facilities, strategic planning. We'll start again in the Commons at 6:30, and then we'll divide up. So that'll be at the high school. And then the other thing that I included in my report, the school report cards will be changing, and they'll look different next fall. And one of the pieces of data that will be provided are climate surveys. And in this first year, it's required that the survey be given to students in grades 6 through 12, and then your pre-K through 12 staff that are the way the state defines it, but primarily certified teachers who are working with students basically is the criteria. And the surveys are seeing the health of each of our schools in 5 key areas. And that's effective leaders, collaborative teachers, involved families, supportive environment, and ambitious instruction. And this is a tool that was developed by the University of Chicago. It's been given a number of years. It's been used primarily in the Chicago public school system. But their research and data demonstrates that if in those 5 areas, if a school is strong in 3 of the 5, then the table is set for improved student achievement. I don't think they'll go as far as to guarantee it will happen, but the table is set. And so basically the timeline, February 1st through March 31st, the school district, that's the survey window. And we will be sending out notification to our families of those students in grades 6 through 12 of when the actual survey will take place. Parents, if they would like to, they would have the opportunity to preview the survey, and they can always opt out to allow their child to participate. And then our staff as well we're right now tentatively looking at our Institute Day to provide a time for teachers to take the survey during that time. This year, parents, the survey is optional for parents. The data would not appear on the school report card. And for this first year, you need to have 50% of your staff and students in grades 6 through 12 complete the survey in order for the data to be accurate. And then the parent component, 30%, is what they would be, the state would be looking at, 30% completion for the accuracy. And so that will be happening again in the that window from February to March. And then what will happen is in April, May, the University of Chicago will actually look at the data and develop the reports. The data will be available to the schools in June, and then it'll appear on the school report card. And again, in those 5 areas, they're going to basically use color coding similar to a stoplight, where green means that you're in really good shape in that area. Yellow is, they're terming it as average, but it's definitely an area that you want to put some focus on. And then any areas that would be red, those are areas that as a school you would want to focus on in terms of your school improvement plan. And so the whole idea is to provide data for schools in terms of their school improvement plan, areas to focus on, and those 5 key areas.
Kevin, are we going to actually ask the parents to take the survey? I know they said it was optional this year. I didn't know how we felt about it as a board. I think it would be important. That was my question, too. I don't know how everybody else feels about it.
You know, the state has just started having their webinars. I sat through one today. Thursday at our admin team meeting, we're going to talk a little bit about that's parent component, how it would work, and how we think that would go for us. And then we'll come forward to the board with the process and procedure for how we'd like to proceed with parents.
Yeah, I'll be interested to hear, sort of the observations there, because clearly the students we can get to, in their school day, so you're going to sample the vast majority of the students. Teachers, we get, answers from the vast majority of the teachers. The trick with the parents is going to be, what's the participation rate of the parents? And, does that skew the results in some way? If there's 700 families but only 70 participate, you've only got 10% of the parents telling you what they think. Mm-hmm. So I'll be interested to hear, sort of how Chicago or how the consortium or how you guys or how the state suggests we deal with that.
How do the buildings factor into that, too? I mean, your experience as a parent with an elementary child is different than your experience with a child, and on a different grade level. So how does that impact your numbers? I mean, do you have to have the bulk of it from that building, from each building, like 10% from each building, 30% from each building? That's a good question. It's something I can follow up with.
Right now they're saying 30%, and the reports would come out for the buildings, and so I'll find out if that's for that particular building. It has to be 30% district-wide, 30%, because typically. It does seem like you get better participation at the elementary level when it comes to parent communication versus at the secondary level.
Because high school kids want nothing to do with their parents.
That has something to do with it. Well, that's something Diana will follow up on and
Thank you.
find out, sure.
So if we do decide to go with a parent survey, I'm going to make an assumption that there's a bilingual survey available.
Right, even for students, the state has made the survey available in different languages. Basically what would occur is we would provide the link either to our students or staff or parents. And when you click on that link, then the person who's taking the survey has to self-select what group they fall into. And then from there, they would have to select what school. If you have a child in more than one school, you can take the survey for each of those schools. if a staff member is shared between buildings, they have the opportunity to take the survey for each of the buildings that they are in. And then you would select language that you're comfortable with taking the survey. So yes, it would be.
Well, and I want to say, I think John brought this up at the Climate Committee meeting, to a certain extent, just talking about it a little bit, and there was certainly interest in that committee in doing a parent survey, just even as a baseline or as a becoming familiar with it, if this is going to be something that's more routine as the years go on. So for what that adds to your discussion you'll be having with the administration.
It's worth mentioning that the survey was designed by the University of Chicago, so I'm sure there's a lot of these factors that they've built into the actual survey. So, you know, it's probably a good thing.
Sure. All right.
Okay, next item on the agenda is board reports. Does anyone have anything in particular to report?
A couple things to mention. If somebody's not going to your joint committee meetings, which I would encourage people to do, the girls are playing Lyle at Lyle. There's nothing quite as exciting as beating Lyle in their home gym on Thursday evening. And then the boys on February 1st play Lyle in Lyle. It's a Friday night game, and again, there's nothing quite like rooting for our kids in Lyle's gym. So just an encouragement there.
Anything else?
From me.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Do we have any public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move forward. Next item is closed session. The chair will entertain a motion to enter closed session for the purpose of discussing collective bargaining, personnel, and litigation issues.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Charleston?
Yes.
Ms. Caparelli?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
And there should be no action after the meeting, or I'm sorry, after the closed session. And a couple of items, future meetings and events. We have the joint committees meeting again on January 24th, and our next school board meeting February 12th. Thank you.